Oh my God, okay. This Vmax is absolutely bleeding me dry, guys. It's bleeding me dry. Now, for those of you out there who did not see the first episode of this build series, this right here is the majority of a 1998 Yamaha Vmax, which I purchased for $700 with the idea that I was going to fix it up and flip it and put it back on the road and go buy another one and get another bike in here relatively cheap, fix that up and flip my way all the way up to a much nicer motorcycle. However, things very quickly went awry. The wheels came off the wagon in a legendarily fast way. All of the details are in the first episode of the build series, so if you haven't checked that out, that is kind of required reading for this one. But if you have, get ready to hear how much this thing has cost. So the way this series worked is me and the Discord boys all put in money. They raised $1,500. Again, they're all going across the screen right here, and I am eternally grateful to every one of the names that is scrolling by, because this thing is just, while it's driving me nuts and is bleeding me dry, I'm having a ton of fun doing it. Then I matched it up to $1,000. So we raised $2,500 with which we could go buy and flip a motorcycle. So this bike here cost $700, which comes out of that total $2,500, which brings us down to only $1,800 left to work with. And I have been keeping pretty religious notes about everything that's been going into this, so I'll have an actual spreadsheet going here so you can see all of the individual purchases. First and foremost, this thing needed a new battery, because of course it did. So that was $76 gone right there. Next up, the throttle cables were busted, and I spent $20 getting a new set of cables. More on that later. Next up, because the master cylinder for the clutch up here doesn't work right now, I needed a new cap, I needed a new rubber insert for it, and some new screws. That ended up being $57. Next up, blinkers are busted on this thing. So I spent $40 on a new set of blinkers as well as the attachments to make them work on this particular bike. Then I needed a pair of load balancing resistors, because this bike right here does not have a flasher relay that I can swap out. So I needed to buy $20 worth of load balancing resistors. Next up, fuel filter, easy. That was only like $13 on eBay. Next up, K&N air filter, because this thing's old air filter was disgusting. I had to replace it, so that is $112.80 right there. We're already cruising through the cash. Next up, the carburetors. Oh my God, the carburetors. The carburetors are probably the single most painful expenditure on this bike. They were over $800.
Mamma mia!
It was insane how much we blew through the budget on this just because of the carburetors on here. This bike had been sitting for so long that the carbs were screwed, and even my tech, who had been, he says he loves doing Vmax carbs. He said these were the worst he's seen in 40 years of working on carbureted motorcycles.
Hey there, it's Chris from Line Bikes. So after 40 years of doing carburetors, yours were officially the freaking worst. Yeah, everything was freaking stuck like you wouldn't believe. I had to actually drill a few screws out because they're all seized in there. Yeah, they were an absolute clusterfuck. They're good now, but holy, yeah, they were bad.
40 years and I had the worst carbs. Awesome! Now here's where things started to fall off the rails. Because I was spending so much money on the carburetors, I wanted to make sure that everything in the intake system is sealing properly. So I bought all new boots for the airbox to the carburetors. I bought new boots for carburetors to V-Boost, and I bought new O-rings for the V-Boost to the manifold, and I bought new boots for V-Boost to V-Boost. I spent so much money on rubber for just the intake system. But the reason why I wanted to spend that cash is because it's so easy with crusty 30-year-old rubber to introduce a vacuum leak, and that would necessitate me tearing all of this apart again. That ended up costing over $300 all in for all of the rubber. Individually, they're not bad, but I was buying 4 of each, so that started stacking up really quickly. And you probably could have found some Chinese knockoff versions of this because they made it for so long, but I don't want to risk putting garbage parts on here when I can get good OEM rubber that still works awesome. Next up, I went to AutoZone and bought $50 worth of hoses for all of the different lines here. I've got vacuum hose, I've got fuel hose. I had to basically go in and replace any of the rubber lines, and I'm still not done with that, by the way. Now, remember how I said we were gonna talk about the throttle cables again? Yup. I, in my infinite wisdom, threw away one of the most important parts of the entire throttle cable assembly, and that is the joint that combines them. I had to spend $100 to get a new 3D printed one because I could not figure out where I could get the actual stock ones. But it doesn't stop there. I had to reorder new throttle cables for the bottom half because there are actually 4 throttle cables on this goddamn motorcycle. Those had to come in from Germany, which that immediately added $30 to whatever the part cost was. So we were just stacking more and more and more on top of this motorcycle. Now, I'm not entirely sure where we are in terms of the cost breakdown here because I don't have a running tally in my brain, but you've been seeing it ding down on screen here, and we are either very close to running out of budget or we are over budget. But let's take it even further into the red, baby. This thing still has the original tires on there, and I need to put brand new rubber on here. It's gonna be like $400 worth of tires on here. Just the set that I'm looking at, $459 on Revzilla. I also had to buy two new fuel pumps. One was $20, one was $40. The reason why I had to buy 2 fuel pumps is one sucked in a bunch of varnish, and I did not want to put that varnishy fuel pump back in and send all of that nasty gas right back into my brand new clean carbs, so I had to buy a brand new fuel pump. But you see this cavernous void right here in the motorcycle, right here? Yeah, that's not supposed to be there. What's supposed to be there is this, a gas tank. You hear that? That's not supposed to make that sound. This thing had varnishy gas sitting in it for probably a decade. This thing is ruined. I have tried my damnedest to save this gas tank, and I just can't do it. I am not going to put this gas tank back into service and have it blow nasty crap through the fuel filters, through the fuel pump, and back into the carburetors. I'm just gonna be back to square one if I do that. So right here, I had to buy myself a brand new gas tank, baby. Mercifully, while they are expensive, they are only $380, $390 for this motorcycle. So that is money well spent if I don't have to get these carburetors cleaned again. But along with that, I cannot put this bike back into service without replacing all of the braking hardware on here. The rotor back here is below thickness, and seriously, I think if I were to put this on the road and ride it, it would explode. It is so old, so rusted, and just ruined. The front rotors are probably fine, but it's cheaper for me to get them all as a set from Walmart, of all places. They actually have a reputable set of brake rotors that I can put right on this thing, which I wouldn't have thought Walmart was the place to get that, but I can get them for $200. But beyond that, we also have brake lines and hoses that are 20 years old at least. These lines are screwed. And if I'm gonna spend the money to replace these lines, I am not buying old rubber hoses. I'm gonna go straight for direct steel lines from the master cylinder to the calipers, and that's added expense. But it doesn't stop there with the hoses. Oh no! I have to replace the clutch hose here because this thing is a mix, like on a car, of solid steel lines and rubber hoses. The steel lines are probably fine. assuming they're not completely full of crusties from the brake fluid that had been sitting in there. But I promise you, all the rubber ruined. So I had to get myself a nice long solid steel cable for the clutch. And to cap it all off, you see what I did there? Whoops. I have to spend $20 on a new coolant cap. Guys, I'm telling you, this project has ballooned in such a way that I was not expecting. So things are changing a little bit with this Vmax project. I am gonna go source a little bit of extra financing for this. And instead of trying to fix this up and flip it, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to make the baddest ass Vmax humanly possible that I can do in my garage here with my limited set of skills. And honestly, I'm gonna try to enter it in the hand-built motorcycle show over that Revival does at the Statesman next year for MotoGP. So I've got a handful of months to get this thing done, get it looking sweet, and then get it entered into a custom motorcycle show. Now the question is, which one of my sponsors out there might be interested in doing some really silly stuff? I'll start with Flying Eyes. I think they'd be in for it. Hopefully you enjoyed this excruciatingly painful look into how much this Vmax is costing. I don't even know exactly what the number is. I don't know what it is yet, but I already know that it's painful. I know I'm so far over budget. Hopefully you guys are at least getting some enjoyment out of this, because this bike is bleeding me dry, guys. And if you did, stay tuned for the rest of the videos on this, because I genuinely think when I'm done, this is gonna be one of the coolest Vmaxes on the road. I already have a lot of parts picked out that I wanna put on here, including like carbon fiber bodywork and stuff. So I think I'm gonna be able to win over a sponsor, have them get the whole build done, but we'll see. It may still be coming out of my pocket. In the meantime, guys, I will catch you in the next one. See you later.